What's an ideal location? What's an ideal place, not just the specific spot, but even the state? I mean, the regulations are so different across states, so we talk about this a lot. It's incredibly different and difficult in California. Florida is difficult. There are a number of markets, though. Texas, for example, we've already seen BSR fair bit easier there. Maybe you guys can talk a little bit to the things that make a site better, easier, and the specific locations. Even soil, right? If you build next to a farm, you're going to get dirt that in your pool from the wind creates water quality issues. You know, what's a great site?
So as Doug knows, the first thing that I always say is water. What is your water story? It's not just, is there water available, but what is your water story? So for instance, if we're out in the Coachella Valley, someone would say, oh my God, it's hot as hell all year round. That's got to be the worst place to get water. But when you dive in deep and you look at their aquifer, the legacy of efforts to bring more imported water to that aquifer, to recycle water and put it into that aquifer, it's actually a very healthy water narrative where you couple a place like that with like what we've done with Desert Surf, where you can take otherwise landscape, irrigated landscape on a golf course, take that out of production and get your water from an aquifer and really get to a net zero water use as a result of your project. Whereas if you come to the coast, to San Diego, where you're at the end of the pipeline, where you don't have large aquifers, where you don't yet have the technology to take full potable reuse, that is treating your sewage to drinking water standards and pumping it right into a pool, it's a much bigger question and a much more difficult hurdle to get over with the regulatory agencies and with the public and with the local politicians over, does the water story make sense? Once you get past the water story, I think you have to jump to marketability and start saying, is the weather of this location the kind of place where surfers are going to want to come? It's this interesting duality. At first you say the perfect place is probably close to the coast where people can drive from their surf spot that they know is crappy half of the year or 3/4 of the year and come get that 1 to 4 hour session out in the desert or in the nearby mountains. But when we look at the way that surfers behave, if you're targeting experienced surfers versus mainly resort dwelling first-time surfers, you might say it really doesn't matter from a locational perspective that surfers have shown themselves willing to travel to the far ends of the planet for the chance at perfect surf. And you're guaranteeing with the wave pool a greater likelihood of good surf, so they'll go anywhere. But then, of course, you start saying, well, they've got a lot of water in Montana. There's lots of cool stuff to do in Montana. But then what do you do for half of the year when it's super cold and locked in? And you start asking yourselves, does that mean we're talking about indoor facilities and some of the wacky things we've seen in other countries where, they have done large-scale infrastructure projects indoors that we don't tend to do here? So I think the perfect place doesn't exist because we already did it in the desert. We already got the permits in the desert, and that was kind of the holy grail from our perspective coming out the gate. But the narratives around your location and kind of the detail of every piece of it are critical, and I think it's critical before you go public with financing and regulatory agencies. Like, you really have to get in and do your due diligence before you can say this spot is good or even doable at all.